Before we start with this list of my favorite metal releases of this past winter and spring, I just have one thing to say to anybody watching my channel who may be from Palestine or has family there. Stay safe. My thoughts are with you guys and all of Palestine. Now, on to the show. Hello fans of all music hard and heavy, welcome to Wheels of Mercury. My name's Calvin, and in this video I'm going to talk about several metal releases that I loved from the winter and spring of 2021. This includes everything from old school style death metal to black metal to even one release each in the subgenres of metalcore and nu metal, which I actually consider to be part of metal, no matter how many elitists on the internet will proclaim otherwise. Because elitism is dumb, am I right? Also, this list will go in order of release date from January to May. Let's get into it. First off, we've got the debut album from Texan death metal crew Frozen Soul entitled Cryptobite, released on January 5th. This band draws heavy influence from the late 80s and early 90s death metal sound, especially from British legend Bolt Thrower. Insanely fast, crushingly heavy riffs, catchy songwriting, and an overall aesthetic drawn straight from wintry horror films like 1982's The Thing, amongst others. The vocals literally sound like the singer is suffering from some pretty serious case of frostbite stuck in his throat. His crooks are commanding and downright demented. Definitely the most frostbitten vocal performance I've heard in death metal. It also didn't really help that the album's release hit right at the time their native Texas had the worst winter storm in decades. An unfortunate spooky coincidence, to be true. Next up is the first album from Austrian one-man atmospheric black metal project, Ancient Mastery. It's called Chapter 1, Across the Mountains of the Drummer's Skull, released back on January 8th on Bandcamp. This is a fantasy-themed concept album set in the world of Valdura that will appeal to fans of stuff like Summon and Caladan Brood. Think lots and lots of keyboards, lyrics about swords and dragons and magic, and an overall epic aesthetic. The mastermind behind this project, who goes by the name of Erect, has composed all these tracks very beautifully. They all flow together, and the contributions by flutist Aliyah Faye and vocalist Lane Miller on the fourth and final track only add to the record's atmosphere. This is an excellent piece of the more atmospheric side of black metal, and I count it as one of the best black metal albums that I've heard this year. Don't sleep on this. We continue in the realm of black metal with As the Flame Withers, the debut album from Greek crew Yas Iria, released on January 25th. If the name of the band seems familiar to any Rotten Christ fans out there, that's because this project features two former members of that band, guitarist Jim Pasturis and vocalist George Zacharopoulos, better known to fans as the Mega. Joined by session drummer Giannis Verteas, they created a stellar piece of melodic black metal that, quite frankly, was very enjoyable to my ears. The warm yet mystical aura of this record is very well produced and put together. I especially love the drums on this record that sound crisp and full and clean. This makes even the blast beats sound pleasant to my ears. In the lane of extreme metal, I would imagine drums would be hard to get exactly right. A prop to the producer George Emanuel for nailing that sweet spot between bludgeoning and pleasant. If you prefer your black metal with a dash of melody while still invoking that tried and true satanic blasphemy, look no further. Next up is some death metal and grindcore from Los Angeles-based band Swampbeast and their first album, Seven Evil Spawned from Seven Heads, released on February 12th. I was made aware of this thing due to a glowing release courtesy of Robert Walton over at the Metal Meltdown. I pressed play, and those dual vocals are disgusting in a good way. I would give this album a recommendation based on those vocals alone. But there were several times throughout listening to this thing that I was thinking to myself, are those guys okay? Just a ferocious and unhinged performance. But it wouldn't be half as captivating if it didn't have a musical backbone. And boy, what a backbone it has. Blending the best of death metal and grindcore is a hard thing to do for a lot of bands. There are very few that can pull it off successfully. Think artists like Napalm Death and Cattle Decapitation. Now I would add Swampbeast to that list as well. Killer stuff. Another album released on the same day was the second full-length LP from Italian avant-garde death metalist Adnavi, entitled Imperative Imperceptible Impulse. The way I would describe this album's sound is if a modern classical composer decided to binge Gorgat's whole discography and said, yup, I'm gonna play some weird-ass death metal now. Seriously, this is like death metal by way of Swampbeast, who's a classical composer, by the way. His piano work is insane. If you want to check that out, go check out some of his piano work. Anyway, it is so atonal, so polyrhythmic, and yet so spellbinding. It is, in my opinion, an avant-garde metal masterpiece that is going to take years for me to pick out all of the little details and all of the nooks and crannies that make it up as a whole. It's not for everybody, but for those who are open-minded enough about music as a whole to give this thing a few spins in order to soak it all in. Especially for those who are looking for new and innovative ways to fuse death metal with classical music. Speaking of innovative, apparently the musicians used unconventional tunings and built their own instruments in order to achieve the sound that they were going for, which is a supreme dedication in and of itself. If you happen to like weird and dissonant metal like Juke Guide, Victory Over the Sun, or the aforementioned Gorgat, this can't come as a higher recommendation enough. Definitely a contender for Death Metal Album of the Year. And speaking of contenders, this next record I'm going to talk about might be in my top 3 of 2021. And that is the Cyclic Reckoning by Suffering Hour, released on the 19th of February. What a record. With the members' origins split between Minnesota and Colorado, these guys play a style of blackened death metal that uses an otherworldly guitar tone, flavors and reverb and other effects. It creates these dizzying melodies that have gotten stuck in my brain for months and summons this unique atmosphere that hasn't really been done with blackened death metal before, to my knowledge. Also, can we just appreciate like the freaking title of this record? Nothing explains the repeating faults of humankind as a species more than that title does. Nothing. You can probably tell I'm having trouble describing this record. Just take my word here and listen to this thing. Especially if you're a fan of, say, the Icelandic band of the Misty Echoes label, like Misterming and stuff like that. Up next is a German black metal project by the name of Conor McGregor and its debut album, Menschenmühle, released on Bandcamp on February 20th. If the name of the project, translated to cannon fever in English, throws up red flags for you, worry not, as this project is not a racist NSBM band, nor do they have members that dress up as military personnel. Thank goodness for that. The album, sung in German, is based off of letters and documents from tortured soldiers who fought in World War I. It details the intense PTSD suffered by those soldiers, and the effects of seeing death so often on battlefields across Europe. The record is full of sound effects of artillery and sound clips of broken men clinging on to life by a thread of the wrist throws on the front lines of battle. For those who are only familiar with mainstream metal, just imagine a melodic black metal response to Metallica's classic track One, but done about the Great War at the length of an LP and in German. Truly dismal, but it would be remiss to me to ignore the musical part of this album. It is shades of melodic death metal, as well as the mournful heaviness of doom metal in some parts. It is well structured, the lines and the riffs are delivered at a right precision, and the mastermind behind the project never forgets to write actual songs instead of riffs joined together. This celebrates the record's catchiness and replayability, a true feat for a work exploring such a dire subject matter. If you're a metalhead who is sick of bands glorifying war, bring this thing. And now, on to one of the two releases that will sure get the elitist bad mouth from me, Lost in the Wave by the French metalcore band Landmarks, released on February 26th. They spell the second A with a V. That I guess? Anyways, this is the band's third studio album. They pull from a lot of different influences from across the spectrum of alternative hard rock, nu metal, and metalcore. Architect is the most glaring influence, but there are others as well. I hear a bit of Knock Loose, a bit of Suicide Silence, and early Bring Me the Horizon, as well as Linkin Park. And that is mostly coming from the vocals of Florent Salfati. Seriously, this guy is probably one of the most versatile metalcore frontmen I've heard in a good while. He can do death growl, ear-splitting shrieks a la Ark and Kyle from Our Mighty Men, as well as singing a rather Chester Bennington-esque style. On one song, he even raps, giving the track a feel akin to bands like Danger Kids or Hacktivist. This thing is only 32 minutes long, so if you need a quick half hour of metalcore that would have found a perfect home at Warped Tour, give this album a shot. Speaking of French bands, I've got another one on this list, this time singing in their native tongue. It's yet another debut LP. It comes from the traditional metal outfit Hozelle, entitled Le Dernier Rempart, and released on March 19th of 2021. These guys play a brand of heavy metal indebted to the 80s and 90s American underground with their own twist on it. On 3 of the tracks, there is a notable use of a bombard, a French wind instrument native to the band's home region of Brittany, which was popular back in medieval times. It's played by guest musician Ronan Ladizet, so big props for him to elevating the atmosphere of this record. Any fans of modern epic metal bands like Eternal Champion and cult favorites like Manila Road and Lord Weir's Slough should check this album out. I would also recommend this thing to folks who appreciate other French language trad metal acts like Murtiel. Allez! And ever forward. Next, we're going down under and cosmic with the new album from Midnight Odyssey called Violin Part 2, The Golden Orb, also released on March 19th. This Australian one-man ambient black metal project headed by Dissipator explores the mysteries of the cosmos and the universe through expansive projects that pull from Vangelis as much as they do Emperor. His albums are well known in black metal circles to be extremely long affairs, oftentimes reaching the hour and 30-minute threshold and sometimes going way beyond that. Well, this new LP, it certainly goes to those lengths, but what's different this time around is that Dissipator has decided to add in a strong epic doom and Viking metal influence. Think bands like Atlantean Codex, Doom Sword, and of course, late 80s era Bathory. The result of this fusion culminates the clean singing taking more of a frontal role than on previous records, while still retaining the expansive soundscapes and grandiosity that his compositions always have. In case you didn't catch it by the title, yes, this record is a sequel to 2019's Volume Part 1. Admittedly, I haven't actually listened to that record in full yet, but what I can tell you is that while that record explores themes of Greek mythology and darkness, the Golden Orb takes that source material to explore the suffocating heat of the sun and how it relates to Helios. It also serves as a metaphor for climate change and how humanity, by throwing off the balance of nature, needs to cleanse itself by bathing in the fires of a warming planet Earth. Don't let that heavy metaphor deter you from checking this out. If you like long cinematic metal epics like Bathory, like Summoning, and like Caladan Brood, check this out. Be patient, soak it all in, and bathe in the light of the sun. It's worth all of its length and then some. Let's jump to a short black metal album next, shall we? It's Kept a Rock, with his second album, Pale Swordsman, put out independently on Bandcamp on April 10th. Emphasis on his, because yet, this is another one-man project. This time it hails from the Ukraine and is the brainchild of a guy who calls himself Crying Orb. Contrasting his hokey alias is this album's music. Soulful, melodic, yet raw black metal intersected with calming post-rock interludes. Oh, and it ends in a Tom Waits-esque piano ballad too. Quite accessible stuff for raw black metal actually, and all of it is capped off with a short running time, just 32 minutes. Concerning the lyrics, the LP tells the story of a vampiric swordsman who longs to break his curse. I won't really spoil it more than that. It is quite the tragic tale. If you want to get into raw black metal but you are scared by the relative harshness of acts like Lamp of Murmur, check out Kept a Rock. It might surprise you. And in my opinion, it's actually perfect music for a rainy day. Now, on to one of the most anticipated metal releases of this year, with Violence Unimagined, the 15th studio album by Buffalo death metal legend Cannibal Corpse. These guys need basically no introduction, being arguably the most successful death metal band ever, and the one that is on most people's list whenever that subgenre is mentioned. This slasher flick lyrics has garnered them notoriety across several countries, even getting their music banned in places like Russia. But what governments fail to realize is that those lyrics, like the horror films that inspired them, are not meant to be taken at face value. It's all just bloody gory fun. For album number 15, the band enlisted longtime producer Eric Rutan as their new lead guitarist, replacing troubled axeman Pat O'Brien. Rutan brings a wealth of experience to the group, having performed with Hate Eternal and fellow legend Morbid Angel. In fact, Eric wrote two of the songs on this album, one of them being the pandemic-themed scorcher Condemnation Contagion, and the other being the short thrasher Overtorture. The band sound as tight as ever, and the vocals of Mr. George Fisher, owner of Blood Snapping Metal and Certified Good Samaritan, sound freaking brutal. I swear, this guy never puts out a bad performance. There's a reason why he is one of the most respected vocalists in death metal. Pure consistency. This should also be a good start for newcomers if you want to know what Cannibal Corpse or even what death metal is in general. The Corpse Boys, melting faces since the 90s. Pure respect. Whew, it's on to my second release that'll get the elitist riled up, and that's Unstable by new metal revivalist Tetra. Released on April 30th, this album brings back the days of angst and fury that you can hear emanating from many teenagers' bedrooms in the late 90s and early to mid-2000s. Lots of touches of Korn, Slipknot, Linkin Park, and Breaking Benjamin. In fact, I was a massive fan of all of this type of music around the age of 14. Albeit 10 years too late, but I didn't care. As a result, I got full-on body chills listening to this thing. It actually transported me back to when I shared a bedroom with my twin brother, sitting frog-legged on the floor of our room, listening to really crappy YouTube uploads of songs from Korn's first album. Yeah, that sort of mood. The second track in particular gave me huge Slipknot vibe. So much so, but I thought I was listening to Volume 3, the supplemental verses all over again. Like, holy shit. There is so much self-nostalgia wrapped up in this record that I would feel comfortable recommending this LP to anybody who would want to relive the gateway nu metal phase again. Before I finish this recommendation though, I have to point out that this band has a black female guitarist. Her name is Diamond Rose. Normally, I wouldn't point stuff like this out, but I think your presence in the band is going to inspire a lot of girls of color who have been bullied or ostracized for liking music that doesn't fit within prejudiced racist stereotypes. They'll see her and be like, wow, she looks like me. Mom, Dad, can I form a metal band now? A great albums all around. Nu metal is back, and I couldn't be happier. Speaking of bands that support oppressed and misunderstood communities, take a look at this album cover. It's a pretty strong statement, eh? This is the cover of the newest project from Violet Cold, entitled Empire of Blood, and released without fanfare on May 7th. This is a bold and amazing statement from this Azerbaijani black metal and electronic project, a full middle finger to all the homophobe that exist in that genre's darkest corners. It is a statement that, in my honest opinion, it shouldn't even be controversial. But the world is full of crappy people, so the music in this album complements the album cover beautifully, being a potpourri of many styles: black metal, shoegaze, electronica, EDM, hip hop, and even like some Eastern pop melodies in there as well. There's even a banjo on a couple of tracks. It's hopeful, catchy, beautiful, and occasionally downright brutal in its execution. It's a very loud and colorful celebration of life and love in all of its forms, and it should be celebrated. But instead, it got ripped apart by some people calling it woke. No offense, those guys need to have their eyes open. The world doesn't revolve around their closed-up mindset, because there are folks that want to be accepted for who they are without judgment and persecution. So, eternal hail to Project Mastermind Eamon Gulia for standing up to the LGBTQ plus community. I love to see it, and I hope you do too. We are up to the second to last release on this list. This is an album by a black metal artist that I've been an admirer of for quite some time. I am referring to the newest full-length by Panopticon, entitled And Again Into the Light, released on May 15th. This long-running Minnesotan and ex-Kentuckian black metal project is the brainchild of Austin Lund. It is most famous for blending atmospheric black metal with bluegrass and various strains of American folk music. In this way, Austin, in my opinion, has been masterful in taking two genres traditionally associated with right-leaning politics and flipping them both on their head. Case in point being a song on his 2018 double album criticizing the controversial immigration policies put in place by certain U.S. presidents. Now, on this new album, Austin strikes up the best of both worlds in an effort that is meant to be a ray of hope in a dark world. Something that, let's be honest here, we need more than ever during these pandemic times. But it doesn't do this with a bang. Rather, it takes its sweet time starting things up with the folk side of his sound, with some gorgeous strings. For launching into the metal side, but even still there are some other influences at play regarding the heavier sections, sludge and doom, even a tiny bit of death metal. It all comes together in a conceptual framing that subverts the modus operandi of black metal as a whole. Instead of the stereotypical hate and grimness that a lot of the Norwegian second wave bands employed back in the day, hope and determination is the underlying emotions for so many of these tracks here. The song that sold the concept of this record for me was the closing track called No Hope. The switch up to BB drumming was dashed with a hardcore on the back end will never fail to give me a rush. Plus the speech about art and the necessity of it beforehand fit the concept like a glove. The only minor complaint I have is that sometimes during the heavier parts the guitars become less clear. Had a bit of a headache from noticing that, as well as the overabundance of reverb on, well, everything. Still, the strange production hiccups don't stop me from recommending this album. It should be on your radar if you like anything close to Agalock or Falls of Wallows, that sort of folky black metal that's indebted to the ecosystems of the American wilderness. Check it out. Well, I guess it's sort of poetic that the last release I'm going to talk about to close off this long video is from one of my favorite bands of the past 5 years, the Danish progressive metal outfit Bola, with their third LP, Witness. Bola plays a style of prog that is heavily influenced by Meshuggah and Deftones, as it is Depeche Mode and fellow Danish band Mew. And for the latter, I can really see them as the influence, but that doesn't deter me from loving Bola even less. Anyways, the last two full-lengths were both stellar. 2015's In Mazes and 2018's Applause of a Distant Crowd are amongst my favorite albums ever. With my expectations sky high for this one, it felt a bit short. I'll get to why in a bit. But I still give this a glowing recommendation. The hooks are massive on this album. 24 Light Years, Freak, and Napalm come to mind. But there are also these bone-crushing gent style riffs that create such a cool dynamic between melodic and heavy, light and dark, if you will. Vocalist and rhythm guitarist Oscar Magan has an emotive yet warm voice that fits the style they're going for so well. And perhaps the best part for newcomers to any type of metal, he uses harsh screams very sparingly. Actually, the new album probably the least he's used any unclean vocals, I think. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure on that. So why did my high expectations fall a teensy bit short? Two things. One, that there is no calm ambient style of track to break up the heavy and lighter prog metal songs as a palate cleanser. Both In Mazes and Applause of a Distant Crowd had one track each that was like what I just described. Those songs were perfect reflective pieces that advanced the atmosphere forward and brought into sonic talent considerably. There's none of that on Witness, and it just sort of deadens the momentum of the album, if you catch my drift. Two, the rap guest feature by Shaman on These Black Claws, while great in practice, fell a little bit out of place. I really respect what they were going for, as the MC behind Shaman has a very deep voice, but it was reaching a little too out of left field for them. It feels more like something like a new metal band like Linkin Park would do. And as Bola ain't new metal at all, it just feels sort of strange coming from them. Still, I highly recommend checking out this album, especially if you want to get into these guys or if you're tired of all the gent bands overusing screaming. And that's a wrap for this extremely long video. I covered a lot of releases. Holy crap. What are some of your favorites from 2021 so far? It can even be EPs if you want to include them. Drop a comment below if you want to share. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you are new to Wheels of Mercury and set your notifications to all so that you see my videos right when they go live. Remember, uploads or premieres on Saturdays every 2 weeks at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Rock on, guys, and I will see you in the next one.